Well, hello, and welcome to the Bible blog at mrkent.com. I'm Mr. Kent, and we're going to be taking a look at chapter 31 of Genesis today. The holidays are pretty much behind us. This is the 27th of December, 2014. Haven't made any video blogs for a couple of weeks, and most of that is because we've been kind of busy getting ready for Christmas. So we'll try to get back to it and get some more blogs put up. If you're following along on the website, just to the right of this video, there's a link to BibleGateway.com. You can click there, and this will continue to run, and you can follow along in one of the versions of their Bibles. They also have what I'm using. I'm using the New King James Version. And when you see something on the screen, it will be the King James Version. They're my favorite versions of the Bible. And so that's what we'll be doing, and hope that you will follow along. Now then, in the previous blog, we looked at chapter 30, and in chapter 30, if you remember, Rachel actually gave birth finally to Joseph, and it had been several years she had watched Leah bear children, and she was finally able to bear a child, and Joseph was born. And then Jacob asked Laban, to let him go now, because he'd served for the two wives, and well, let's see. Let's just take a look at chapter 30, verse 27 real quick. And Laban said to him, "Please stay, if I have found favor in your eyes, for I have learned by experience that the Lord has blessed me for your sake." And that's pretty much true, because if you remember way back when Jacob first saw Rachel, she was the one herding the flock that he had. Now he has a huge flock. And then from there, Jacob made an agreement to work for him for another few years, and he gained. He made a deal where the speckled and spotted sheep would be his, and then of course he did what he thought he was able to do to make him be that way. And we're going to find out that I think it was just God helping him. He was trying to help God, and God was helping him. But anyway, so that's where we are. So let's start with verse 1 of chapter 31. It says, "Now Jacob heard the words of Laban's sons, saying, Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what was our father's he has acquired all this wealth." So in all the scheming and everything that Jacob did, he's got a lot more sheep than Laban does. And his sons are seeing that, and of course, they're the descendants of Laban, and they want some kind of an inheritance. So now they're getting jealous. So verse 2, "And Jacob saw the countenance of Laban, and indeed it was not as favorable toward him as before." And as before, I don't think they ever did get along. If we take a look at chapter 30, verse 34, for instance, and Laban, they were talking, and Laban said, "Oh, that it were according to your word." So Laban didn't trust Jacob. And then in verse 27 of chapter 30, Laban said to him, wait a minute, let's see, where is that chapter? Yeah, verse 30, chapter 27. We've already read that. And so he didn't want him to leave and so forth. So they have not gotten along all these years that Jacob has been married to his sons, or to his daughter. Excuse me. Verse 3, "Then the Lord said to Jacob, Return to the land of your fathers and to your family, and I will be with you." So God's promising that he's going to take care of him. And he tells him, you better get out of here. God's giving him a way to escape, as we find that we have in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13 and 14. And the way to escape is to flee. But we won't go there right now. I try to keep these as short as possible, but that's 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 13 and 14. And so So the Lord has told Jacob to do this. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field to his flock. So he's calling them to come on out of the tents where you're living around Laban's family. Come out in the field because I need to talk to you. And by the way, if you hear a squeaking sound, it's my dog in the background playing with a toy. And we'll just let her play. So he says, come out, and verse 5, and he said to them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not favorable toward me as before, but the God of my father has been with me. And so he's telling them that, there's something going on here. Verse 6, and you know that with all my might I have served your father, yet your father has deceived me and changed my wages 10 times, but God did not allow him to hurt me. So over this period of about 20 years or so, we don't know the details, but changing wages 10 times and so forth, that must have really taken place. And so, and then he says, but God didn't allow him to hurt him. So there must have been some real animosity between those two guys. Verse 8, Jacob speaking, he says, if he said thus, the speckled shall be your wages, then all the flocks were speckled. And if he said thus, the streaked shall be your wages, then all the flocks were streaked. So Jacob's saying, if Laban said that if I got the speckled ones, well, then they turned out speckled. And if they were streaked, then I got the streaked. And as it turned out, that's how they all came out. So verse 9, he says, so God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. Now, the interesting thing is, yes, we'll see that God's doing this, but he thinks if you remember from the last chapter, he thought he was doing all of this. And, of course, I don't know, there's some things that we can do, but God's in control. So verse 10, and it happened at the time when the flocks conceived that I lifted my eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the flocks were streaked, speckled, and gray spotted. So he had some dreams, and he saw these things happening, and so of course leaped means they were mating. Verse 11, then the angel of God spoke to me in a dream, saying, Jacob, and I said, here I am. Now if you have the New King James Version handy, you notice that that's a capital A on angel. And when you see that, that's the personification of Jesus in the Old Testament. So verse 12, and he said, lift up your eyes now and see all the rams which leap on the flocks are streaked, speckled, and gray spotted. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. So here we find that God, and Jesus is explaining, he's the one that's making this happen. And making this happen. And so many times we think, well, look what I did, But in fact, it wasn't us at all. We thought we were making all these good things happen. But the fact is, the blessings were coming straight from God. Okay, so verse 13, God says, he says, I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed the pillar, and where you made a vow to me. Now arise and get out of this land and return to the land of your family. So if you remember from way back, several chapters, when Jacob was fleeing from his brother Esau, and he camped out in an area by the town of Luz, and he worshipped as he stayed there that night, and then he named it Bethel. So he made a vow. In other words, that's probably, like I said at that point in time, that's probably when he really put his trust in God. Verse 14, then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there still any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? So he's been explaining to his wives what has been going on. And now they ask this questions, and they say, are we not considered strangers by him? For he has sold us and also completely consumed our money. For all these riches which God has taken from our father are really ours and our children's. Not now then, whatever God has said to you, do it. So, back in those days, there was supposed to be a dowry and so forth set aside for the wives of the son-in-law, and none of that has taken place. So they're a little bit bitter. Verse 17, Then Jacob rose and set his sons and his wives on camels, and he carried away all his livestock and all his possessions which he had gained, his acquired livestock which he had gained in Padam-Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. So he gathered everything up. And of course, verse 19 points out that now Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the household idols that were her father's. So they did this while Laban was away. He was shearing sheep. And of course, this was planned. Laban did this at a certain time every year, I suppose. And so they waited until this time. But the interesting thing is, here's Rachel. She goes in and she steals his household idols. Now, household idols are things that, you spend your time worshiping and so forth. And we have to be careful, because we can have household idols also. One of the worst household idols that we find in most Christians' homes is a television set. And you spend a lot more time, if you're a normal Christian, you probably spend a lot more time sitting in front of that than you do worshiping the Lord, if you think about it. I'm not going to condemn you for it, because none of us are perfect, but we do the same thing, and we got to be mindful of the fact that is that becoming an idol. So anyway, she shouldn't have even wanted those things. But Rachel's a little different. She's a beautiful woman, but I don't think she's all that close to the Lord. So we're just going to move on here. And verse 20, Jacob stole away unknown to Laban the Syrian, in that he did not tell him that he intended to flee. So now God calls Laban a Syrian. See, his family stayed in Padam-Aram, which was way up north of the Promised Land, instead of moving on with Abraham. And so Abraham came down with his family, and so Laban is considered a Syrian. He's no longer really family. And one of the things that Jacob did here is he was angry enough that he decided he was just going to pull out and not give him 2 weeks' notice, because who knows what might have happened to him if he'd have done something like that. And nowadays, when we're working for somebody, it's always polite and respectful to give your employer 2 weeks' notice or so before you leave. But there have been times in my life when I didn't give them the 2 weeks notice because I didn't feel like they deserved it. But I was working at one place where you had to give them 6 weeks notice, and I didn't give them 6 weeks notice. I gave them 2 weeks notice, and they were really unhappy with me. But not everybody's always happy with me anyway. All right, so now we're on verse 21. So he fled with all that he had. He arose and crossed the river and headed toward the mountains of Gilead. So he crossed the Euphrates River. Remember, when he came up into Padam-Aram, he came up on the west side of the Jordan River and came up. Now he's crossing over the river, the Euphrates, and heading directly south into the mountains of Gilead. So for what reason? There could be a couple of reasons. For one thing, we know he's going to meet his brother, who is directly south of the mountains of Gilead. He's headed that direction, although he will not end up there. And so that could be one reason, because God said to go back to your family, and of course his brother is his family. And he also said to go back to your father, the land of your fathers, which is on the west side of the Jordan River. So anyway, but he's going directly south now into the mountains of Gilead. Verse 22, and Laban was told on the third day that Jacob had fled. So 3 days went by, Jacob's on his way. And then verse 23, then he took his brethren with him and pursued him for 7 days' journey, and he overtook him in the mountains of Gilead. So Jacob had traveled for about 10 days, and now hoping to get away, and now Laban catches up with him. And you're saying, well, now why didn't Laban head down the way that Jacob came from originally? And Laban is probably able to follow if when we find out what a big herd of stock that that Jacob had, it would be really easy to track the droppings from all of those animals. So he's following up, and he catches up with him. But verse 24, God had come to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night and said to him, "Be careful that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad." So God's telling him, don't say anything good, don't say anything bad, just be straightforward. And of course, that's good advice for all of us whenever we're speaking to somebody who we're not on good terms with. It's yay, yay, and nay, nay, and that's about it. You don't mislead people, in other words. Verse 25, so Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mountains, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mountains of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done, that you have stolen away unknown to me, and carried away my daughters like captives taken with sword?" So, now he's going to scold him. And verse 27, "Why did you flee away secretly and steal away from me, and not tell me? For I might have sent you away with joy and songs and timbrel and harp." So here's Laban doing his spiel. And of course, the key word there is might have, or he might have tried to kill him, because we can see from all the inferences that they did not get along. Verse 28, and he says, "And you did not allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Now you have done foolishly in so doing." And of course, this is kind of neat, because he's not supposed to say anything good or anything bad, just be straightforward. Well, it's pretty blunt to call a man a fool. But see, he's not calling him a fool. He's saying you have done foolishly, which has the same meaning as calling a man a fool. And so there's a little bit of wisdom going on here in the mind of Laban, because he wants to really get to him, but God said not to. So he's not calling him a fool. He's saying, verbally, he's not calling him a fool. He's saying you've done foolishly. But if you read between the words, he's calling him a fool. And verse 29, "It is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, be careful that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad." Notice he didn't say my God. He said the God of your father. Verse 30, because his gods happen to be packed up with Rachel. And now, verse 30, "And now you have surely gone because you greatly long for your father's house. But why did you steal my God?" So first of all, Laban now admits that, okay, you're gone. You're not coming back. I understand. Now he's going to ask him, why did you steal my gods? Now, remember, Jacob has no idea that they've been stolen. So he says, and Jacob answered and said to Laban, because I was afraid, for I said, perhaps you would take your daughters from me. So first he's answering the first question. Now he's going to answer the second question. "With whomever you find your gods, do not let him live in the presence of our brethren. Identify what I have of yours and take it with you." For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. So now he's just putting Rachel's life on the line. Because he has no idea, and he thinks maybe one of the guys stole him or something. And so this could turn out bad. Verse 33, "And Laban went into Jacob's tent, into Leah's tent, and into the two maids' tents, but he did not find them. Then he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household idols and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them, and Laban searched all about the tent, but did not find them." Now, when I first read this, and it had to be explained to me, she wasn't sitting on the camel. The camel's saddle, you take off the camel, and you can carry your belongings in it and so forth. And so she was sitting on it, and then she said to her father, let it not displease my Lord, that I cannot rise before you, for the manner of women is with me. And he searched, but did not find the household idols. So, she was making an excuse that it was her time of the month, and so she couldn't get up. And so then Jacob was angry and rebuked Laban. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, "What is my trespass? What is my sin that you have so hotly pursued me. I'll take just a second here to explain the difference between a trespass and a sin. For one thing, Jacob, in his case, it would be called a sin because he had no knowledge that what was going on was wrong, and that's just pure outright sin, doing wrong and not knowing it's wrong. Trespass, on the other hand, is what Rachel is doing, for she knew it was wrong, and yet she went ahead and stole the idols. So the difference here is a trespass is when you sin and you know it's wrong, whereas a lot of sin is done by people, especially people who don't know the Lord, and they don't even know it's a sin, but God's counting it as a sin, when you steal and lie and stuff like that. Verse 37. Although you have searched all my things, what part of your household things have you found? Set it here before my brethren and your brethren, that they may judge between us both. Then he says, these 20 years I have been with you, and your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried their young, and I have not eaten of the rams of your flock. That which was torn by beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it. You required it from my hand, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. There I was in the day, the drought consumed me, in the frost by night, and my sheep departed from my eyes. Thus I have been in your house 20 years. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. So he's really laying it out for Laban, and he's pointing out that he took the loss whenever anything happened, that to Laban's sheep, who he was also watching, and then he also reminds him of all the things that Laban has done wrong to him. And then he also tries to play on his sympathy of how he was out on the hot summer days and the cold winter nights and still took care of his sheep. Verse 42, unless the God of my father, the God of Abraham, let's start over again. Unless the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God has seen my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night. So Jacob just kind of came down on him because he found a weak spot where Laban had accused him of stealing, and Jacob thought he was totally innocent. Well, he thought he was totally innocent. All right, verse 43. And Laban answered and said to Jacob, these daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and this flock is my flock. All that you see is mine. But what can I do this day to these my daughters, or to their children, whom they have borne? Now therefore, come, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. So here's Laban. Obviously he's the grandfather of all these children that Leah and Rachel have borne, and what their mates have borne. And so he's looking at 11 kids that were his grandkids, and he had to care about them and he had to love them. So he's feeling kind of bad. And so Jacob, verse 45, took a stone and set it up as a pillar. Then Jacob said to his brethren, gather stones. And they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there on the heap. Laban called it Jegar, let's see, Jegar is a heap of witness. Jegar Shahadutha, but Jacob called it Galeed, Galeed, which means a heap of witness. So it depends on their languages, I suppose. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me this day. Therefore its name shall be called Galeed. Also Mizpah, because he said, may the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent from another. So Mizpah means to watch. In other words, you just watch out, which is how we would say it today. In verse 50, if you afflict my daughters, or if you take other wives besides my daughters, although no man is with us, see, God is witness between you and me. So Laban's telling them that his God's going to be watching. Not Laban's God, but Jacob. Then Laban said to Jacob, here is this heap, and here is this pillar, which I have placed between you and me. This heap is a witness and this pillar is a witness that I will not pass beyond this heap to you, and you will not pass beyond this heap and this pillar to me for harm. So in other words, he says, you don't come up here and do something for harm. If you want to bring the kids and stay for Christmas, wait a minute. Well, let's go to verse 53. Then the God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. And Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. So, Jacob had a lot of respect for his dad. And this became a boundary, between what would be, a loose boundary between what would be Syria and what would be Israel. But I'm sure that didn't remain a boundary, but it was up there in the mountains of Gilead. Verse 54, Then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain and called his brethren to eat bread, and they ate bread and stayed all night on the mountain. And early in the morning Laban arose, kissed his sons and daughters, and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned to his place. It's a sad day for Laban. He had to say goodbye, and he'd probably never see him again. He'd never see Rachel again, because she's gonna die giving birth to Benjamin before they ever get home. So there's chapter 31, a story of two guys that didn't really get along, father-in-law and son-in-law, and doesn't say anything in there about the mother-in-law, but we'll assume she was okay. All right. So anyway, thank you for stopping by, and come back some more. We'll go to verse 32 next time we put a blog together, and I hope that you've put your trust in Jesus 100%. And God bless you, and we'll see you next time.